Hi, welcome to the October 16th, 2020 Club Cubase Google Hangout. I'm going to do a quick audio test and we will get started here in just a couple minutes. Bear with me just for a moment. Hi, welcome to the Okay. Audio sounds good. All right, my name is Greg Undo. I am a product specialist for Steinberg products for Yamaha Corporation of America. I'm based in the United States. I work as a product specialist. So, and if you haven't attended a Hangout before, how it works is questions can be submitted in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de, or you can enter the questions in the chat field. So this event will be available to watch afterwards, and we should have the index done within next 24 hours or so, where we kind of have everything, all the topics with timestamps covered and explained. So we will be able to do that. Sorry, I'm just having all sorts of messages pop up on my computers as we do this. So we should have the timestamped index, but you could also, if you're watching live, you can simply go and type in your questions in the live chat field. We'll try to get through as many questions as possible. My ability to answer the questions as quickly as they come in will be hampered as more questions come in, so I will get behind. We'll try to get through as many questions as possible. We'll try to go a little bit under 4 hours today. So we'll get through a lot of the questions. So when you ask your questions, sometimes if you could specify, which platform you're on, Mac or PC, which version of Cubase. So if it's Cubase Artist 8 or, Cubase Pro 10.5, sometimes that information is helpful as well. If we could try to refrain from asking the same, if I don't get to your question right away, if we could refrain from asking the question over and over again, that kind of tends to clog up the chat field and makes everything a bit slower overall. So if we could try to avoid asking the same question repeatedly, that would be helpful. We'll try to get through it in chronological order as they're asked. So with that, if you're watching the live version of the Hangout, you can please feel free to introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from. If you're watching the Hangout live for the first time, just let us know. We want to welcome everyone here. And we'll get started in a couple minutes. We're going to let some people get logged in. So if you're watching this on the replay, you may want to skip ahead. Usually we get started around 10 minutes after people get logged in. So let's go ahead and see who is. I see we have a lot of questions already coming in. Let's see who is on our Hangout, and we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for the Hangout. Okay, so we're seeing some questions on different topics coming in. All right, so we see Taylor from Pine Grove, Pennsylvania. We have Bristol, England. We have Amsterdam. All right, so we have Rich from Reston, Virginia. So I'm based in Alexandria, Virginia. So good to see you on a Hangout, Rich. Not too far from me. All right, so we have Brian from Crystal Coast, North Carolina. We have Anthony in Detroit. We have Iceland. Okay, so let's see who else is on. All right. We have Matt from Fort Wayne. Good to see you. We have Jazz Dude, who's always incredibly helpful, answering questions when I can't get to them that come ahead of me. So we appreciate it. And also has lots of great knowledge on computers and different systems. All right, so we have Bristol, England. Okay, let's see who else. We have Vienna, Austria. We have Paris. All right, so we see Pablo from Galicia, España. All right, so we have Michael from Weatherford, Texas. All right, so we have Leopolina from Montenegro. It says Cubase Elements, your first time watching the stream. Welcome. Please feel free to ask any questions. All right, so we have Paris, Vienna. All right, so we have Bronx, New York. All right, let some more people get logged in. And we'll get started here in just a few minutes. All right, so we have Bangladesh. All right, so we see Ted Springman on. We have Prague from Czechoslovakia. Prague in Czechoslovakia. All right. All right. Good to see Fuji on Hangout from Atlanta. Hope you're doing well. I liked your piece you shared a couple months ago on Facebook. All right, so we have Sub 403. All right, we have Maryland. It's pretty close to me. All right. So with David from Mauritius. I believe that's how it's pronounced. Sorry for my ignorance. All right, so we have Berkshire, UK. All right, so we have John Koskin from Kenosha. Good to see you on a Hangout, John. All right, we're going to get started in about one more minute. So just see a quick comment from Pablo, Greg, you and everyone. Are you okay at home? We're doing great here. Thanks. Just we're being boring, staying in. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm just going to rewind to the top of the chat field and we'll get started going through our questions. And like many of you, I have family members that are home and I have some family that's visiting as well. So we'll see if we have any distractions, but I'll apologize in advance for that. Okay, so we see a question from, I think it's Dank Fancy. I recorded some comp vocals on a loop, and I have a lot of clips I want to use, but they aren't in sequence. I want to put them in a folder so I can string them together however I want, but I can't. The pool... Okay, so it says the pool window doesn't show the clip description names, so I can organize them. So I can organize them in the pool window either. So let's go take a quick look. Open up project here. Okay, so make sure I have my audio interface configured correctly here. Okay, so we should be able to. Okay, so let's say I've done a comped recording, like multiple passes on a particular file. So like I've done this on a track, and often when we do this, you may I'll just solo this and do a quick to show you kind of what it looks like as we work on a part. So I will just say I want to do like a quick one measure comp recording. So I will put it into cycle mode and hit record. And then as it goes back, it's going to record a different pass every single file. So you see take 8, take 9. And a lot of times you get these little lines like this indicating that there's multiple audio files kind of underneath. So it's going to play back the file that's on top. And as you work with this, you could click on the lanes and expose the lanes to see all of the different takes. And we'll show you just on like this bass part here. So that's how the recording process could take place. But let's say as I'm working on a particular file here, so let's say, and I wanted to now do a comp version of that, all you would need to do is to just grab the little hand tool, and this is the comp tool, and this is going to allow you to, build your comp just kind of like this. If you want one phrase from here, you could also just audition. So if you hold down like Control or Command, and listen to the different passes and say, oh, I like this one better than this one or this one. So you could, very easily do that. And when you have kind of your comp built up, and if you want to, at this point, say, okay, I want to take all of these different parts and be able to, have one particular file that's going to play back consistently, I just would come over here and close the particular lane. So even though they're in different versions, they'll kind of all be applied directly to your file there. And if you wanted to, do a bounce selection, you could have one, new audio file, but all the files here will allow you to go back and change the comp if you wanted to. Now, we also there was a point, the pool window doesn't show clip description names. So I'll jump back to my other project. And I'll activate this, and the clip descriptions, can be seen in the pool. So if you've gone through a particular audio file, and if you don't know this and you want to work with clips, we go to kind of the little setup window and make sure that you have regions activated. So I could take different regions here, add them. You could type in your own name description. So if you wanted to grab this and say, all right, and let's just make a couple of more regions. Now, these are still being referenced from the original file, and how, we could see these regions in a couple different areas. I think we could actually just drag a region directly to our timeline if we wanted. But if you want to see the regions in the pool, what you need to do is just, we'll go to our media menu and open up our audio pool. And as we see any audio file that has regions here, we'll have a little plus sign. And these are the regions from that particular audio file. So if you've, created regions of an audio file, they're all going to be here. So these aren't separate files, but what they are is directly, coming over here directly in the pool. And from there, they're references to portions of this audio file. So if I wanted to take these audio files and at this point turn them into separate audio files, I could right click, and if you go to audio and just say bounce selection, at that point we could just have those automatically created as new and distinct audio files directly inside. So let's say I just typed in a bunch of gibberish names. So, but you could see some of those gibberish names just kind of show up here. So they'll show up in the pool that could be saved. So give that a quick try. And so that way you should be able to see the description of regions if you've created them in the pool window as well. So you see question, Greg, could you please take us through TV advert soundtrack production, list of instrument, VST you would need, how to go about production, etc. It'll really benefit us all. This could be tricky because, every project could be different. I know a lot of times, one of my friends who's a composer who does a lot of TV work, I'll show you one of the tricks he did, and he's always very quick to get all the latest Steinberg content packs. So when we come over here, let's say I'll just start off in one that I know he did. I think it was like a commercial for Revlon or something. And he had incredibly short deadline, but it's a, national account. And he got it because he could do something so quick. So he just started doing stuff with Laserbeam, which is a groove agent kit that comes with, with Cubase. So, depending on, if you're doing orchestral stuff, the instruments can vary. So let's say, I think he just went to like K-Wire and so it has all these different sounds. And when you go to the pattern banks, let me just go down a couple octaves. And just go down one more octave. I'll do my computer here. So he would just kind of so he did something not too dissimilar from that. And got like a huge national ad campaign, the music. So it, but it really could depend, if you're doing, if it's going to be, something like a little more, probably a jewelry commercial may have more, may have, more classical things, if it's for different demographics. I know when I used to work in studios, I was involved with, I think it was a Pringles ad campaign. So, they did, the same jingle. They did a hip hop version. They did a, kind of a mainstream version, and they did a Latin version, and they would do kind of different demographics and have, the same lyrics and same theme, but for different stations and different market and different demographics. So but it's kind of it could be a very broad question if you have a particular thing. But I just remember my friend Mark telling me, how he did that. And, in 15 minutes, he had a whole kind of campaign under his belt and got paid really well for it. So, all right, let's move on. Okay, so it says, hi, Greg, I need a hand understanding. Is our question. A few things, please. The dialogue hash marks on tracks representing multiple takes, how to manage, combine, edit, those tracks appear with the diagonals. So just kind of like what we were showing in this particular project. So where we have our hash marks here. So just kind of make this, in case I'll make this really big and obvious. So when we see kind of the hash marks where we see this line difference as opposed to, let's say, just a part here. So we see that this line, this visual distinction indicates that it's going to have, I'll make this the same color as well. So when we see kind of the lines over part, that's indicative and showing that there's multiple parts kind of underneath that could be revealed. So, and again, how to manage and edit when the tracks appear with the diagonals. That's just going to be, like we showed earlier, just by clicking on the lanes button here in the track inspector. And then once you have that done, we could use the comp tool again, just a little hand, and be able to, take the different sections from each take and then say, this is our perfect recording, and you could, create a composite track just that easily. Okay, so second question, Groove Agent 5 pattern editor, best practice when creating new patterns, altering existing patterns, trying to simplify patterns mostly. Do not want to overwrite the preset. Thanks in advance. So let's take a look at that. So let's open up the full version of Groove Agent. Okay, and I'll just go to my pattern editor. So see, this might be the wrong. Yeah, let me open up an R1. Okay, so let's say I want to go to, and let's see if we could do this. I may need to do it in Beat Agent, but I'll find out. So I'll come over here to the pattern. I'll just do this with a Beat Agent kit. Bear with me just for a second. Okay, so let's say I want to take like this pattern and be able to, edit this particular pattern. Well, so I'll just say, okay, let's come over here. Let's go to, so you could have kind of the instrument and pattern tab. So we'll just click on pattern here. And I think what we could do, is, and the question is, like if I wanted to take a particular pattern and simplify it, and do I need to kind of erase the other one? So let's say if I could drag this pattern, I'm going to drag it to a new empty pattern. So take the pattern here, and let's just see if I could copy that. Let's see if I copy that pad, and if I paste it here. So now what we've done is just taken this particular pattern here. So let's say, so what I want to do is choose copy pad. I'll go to like a blank area here. So I want this, and then what I'm going to do is just set this to paste the pad. And then at this point you can do your different editing. So you say, okay, I want this without the fill at the end of the snare. So as we trigger this pattern, So, and you could say, okay, now I just want to throw in so now I could so you could just kind of modify the patterns kind of as you see fit. So if you wanted to come in here and have some different velocities as well, you know, and if you want to put in different rhythms, you can say, okay, let's put in maybe like a 16th note triplet. So you could have different pattern pads. So you could do stuff like that, but again, you could just kind of right click, copy that pad, select one of the other pads and just paste. And then that pattern you could modify without losing the original pattern, because each pad could have its own separate and unique pattern. So I think it's best to leave the originals because you may want to use that for something else and just simply modify, make it simpler as you need. Okay, so question. I need to set the tempo of a project from a drum that is not recorded with a metronome. Then record other instruments and correct their tempos according to that drum. Some sections of the song don't have drum and are a-tempo. How to do this? Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'll start off with a project that doesn't have any set tempo. And this could be for, like, you know, a full project. Let me just find that one, see if I have it in here. Okay, so we'll just go to this. Okay, so let's say I don't have a steady tempo, and the click has no correlation with what's going on. So let's say those are drums that don't have it's not recorded with a metronome, and then you want to record other instruments and correct the tempo. So once you're here, what the trick is, we could do a tempo detection from the project menu. So I'll go to project to tempo detection. I'll say analyze. And we'll play. And let's say I want to do like an offbeat correction. So now we've kind of figured out what that particular tempo is of the file. Now, if we wanted to dynamically change the tempo of that file, even though it is varying in tempo, you know, pretty regularly, we could go to audio to advanced, and I'll just say we will set definition from tempo. Once we do that, and this could be for multiple tracks, at this point we could just, you know, record. So that basically is embedded all of these tempo changes of every single beat on this file. So we listen to it now. But now what I could do is just come over here and say I wanted to play back a perfect 120 beats a minute. I could have the tempo be completely regulated. So let's say I want to be 144, or let's say 156, 176, 88. So you get the sense that, you know, the tempo is very dynamic. So now if you wanted to play that back at 120 beats a minute or whatever, let's say a steady 144, record other parts those parts will be tempo stamped. So as the audio is, so as the audio goes on, sorry, this may. So as we go on with the audio, that will be tempo stamped. And once each track is placed into musical mode, so let's say I'm playing this and I have, let's say, a drum loop. So I will come over here. Let's find something horribly inappropriate. So I could just drag any other audio recording in that's a loop. So anything that's been recorded will be tempo stamped. So I'm going to come right over here. And I'm just going to turn my snap on. It will snap the beginning of this to the grid here. So I'll just say we're going to snap to bar. And I'll hit J to turn snap on. So right now, if this part isn't set to musical mode, that it's going to play back kind of different tempos. But if I have this duplicated multiple times, but now if I put this into musical mode, these events will automatically speed up and slow down correctly. So I'll just delete all those. Let's come here, let's duplicate. So now as we do this, this is going to follow the tempo like of the original track. So any other audio will now follow whatever the tempo is once it's in musical mode. So record the new parts at whatever tempo they are, just record them, and at that point they once you put the master tempo on, if it's set to musical mode for each of the events, they will all kind of fall and lock into the same tempo for you. And even if I also see that some of the parts won't have drums, and that's totally fine. And you could, just have those parts will automatically kind of work for you based on where you were. So it's pretty easy to do. So give that a try and let us know how it works out. Okay, so we have the third question from Mark Rabin, who had the Groove Agent. Says, I'm not too successful with Groove Agent 5 paid. I have lots of additional sound packs too. Should I be nudging my drums, mix down file for better feel? So, if I would, if you're using a lot of the Groove Agent drums, and I'll just jump back to my other project, so, if you have your drums set up here and, maybe, you're not liking the feel or something like that, if you do an export of the MIDI stuff, you can, it's going to play the same exact thing in audio. But if you're using like the built-in patterns, so let's say I want to take like this one, I could drag that pattern right onto the timeline. And at that point, if you need to edit, you could now just kind of double click, and I'll just say, let's, show the drum editor. So now we could see kind of all of the parts, and I'll just choose to, show only the events, only the tracks, sounds that have the particular event. So if you wanted to adjust the timing and your different aspects here, so I'll just kind of snap that to the downbeat, you can, and just kind of modify and try out different ideas pretty easily there. So if I would try to take it at the MIDI level first, And if that's not kind of the feel or vibe that you're trying to get, rendering it to audio will, play back the same exact thing. So, and you have a lot, it's much easier to move a note here a little earlier than it is within an audio file. So I would, work on the MIDI parts that's being sent to get the right feel for you. So I see a nice comment from Mark. Also hope that Greg and all the Cubasers are safe. Well, happy making the best tunes of their lives. Thank you, Greg. You're welcome. Yeah, we always hope for everyone's safety and that everyone's been healthy. Okay. All right, so we have Valerio joining us again from Milano, Italy. Great to have you on. Okay. All right, so we have a question from Real Records. When is new Cubase coming out? So I'm sure, if you look at kind of past performance and release dates, that it may fall within that pattern. I can't really comment on it, but, I know that there's lots of our development team, the nice ladies and gentlemen on that team that are, have been working really hard during pandemic to come up with some great stuff. So. Okay. Again, same question. When is Cubase 11 coming? So when it's ready, and when release date is. So okay. Okay, so I just see just seeing if I missed an earlier comment, but all right, let's just go ahead with this. So after asking around on forums and Discord and trying to ask others, how can I find meter time signature from words, phrases? I realize that most people seem to write music and then write lyrics. I'm asking for a lyrics word processor. It allow us to hyphenate to break up words, use standard punctuation to pause, extend syllables of words, phrases, play back beat with a user chosen instrument, kick, snare to make it sound harmonically close to singer, and then recommend time signatures from lyric layout. So, for some of this stuff, I've seen some people do, like doing vocal chops inside of Cubase. So let's say, let's see if I could come over here. I'll just do this in Groove Agent SE. So let me just import a quick audio file. So there's nothing kind of that does that automatically, but just think I have a quick file I could use for some vocal chopping. Right. Okay, so I'll just try this file. So let's say I have just a quick. Okay, so let's say I have something like this, or you could just say, New day is like a. And, I wanted to do, so there's nothing that kind of does exactly describe. I think it could be interesting. But I'm just going to add now a copy of Groove Agent SE, because this could be done for anyone that has Cubase with Groove Agent SE. And what I'm going to do is just kind of drag that particular file directly onto a pad. So if I just want to take a vocal, and I'm going to go to my slice tab, and we'll have it kind of create slices. And let's just say I want to put it in manually. So I'm just going to hold down. I think it's... All right, let me just... try to remember the key to do this, but I'll just do a little bit of it based on transient. So now, as soon as I've done that, each of these... So, and then you're able to kind of just trigger this. So let's say if let me find my range. So it's probably not exactly what you're looking for, but it's kind of a good idea that I could pass on to some of our product planning people. I kind of get the sense of where you want to go with that. I believe it's Jay from New Haven. All right, so we have someone else on their first hangout from Bristol, England. Welcome. Okay. All right, so we have Soren in Sweden joining us as well. All right, so we have Jan has a new handle for his CubaseIndex.com, which is a website where you could use to search for all the topics covered in the Hangout. So good to see you on the Hangout, Jan. Thanks for all your great work. Okay, so we just see comment. Hi, I suggest some ideas for Cubase better performance. We'd always love to get our customer feedback. That's how we get new features integrated. Okay, so one of the new features suggests is add undo and redo button for all compressors, limiters, equalizers, channel settings, plugins, VST, etc. So let's just jump back to one of our projects. So a lot of people miss. There's kind of two edit histories. So let's say I have this project going on and I have different plugins. So let's say I'm coming over here and, I would just start mixing a little bit. I move to fader here. I adjust the EQ. I come to my channel strip. I wanted to add a plugin. I wanted to adjust. So all my different settings I do here. All right, so as I have all this going on. So if we just hit, I think it's Alt or Option Z, and I'll just show it in kind of the full mix console view. But you actually have kind of an undo history here. So this is every little change that you've made for all of your plugins can just be done and modified right here. So as I do this, let's say I move a fader, that shows up in my mixer history. I wanted to do this. I wanted to adjust, the EQ. I wanted to come here. And have my low cut filter. I wanted to turn phase on. Let's adjust this band of the EQ. So I want more gain. All that will just show up. And then you could just hit Alt Z or Option Z and then Alt Shift Z for your mix console, undo history, undo, and redo. And this is also available on the mixer as well. So it's not per plugin or per process, but you could also just kind of hit these parameters here. So let's say I move these, and now I just say, I wanted to undo those last changes. And you could just kind of go through all of your undo history for your mix console directly there. Okay, and the second suggestion is opening of two or more equalizers beside each other to be possible. So in Cubase 10.5, one of the things that was added was the kind of comparison EQ. So let's say if I'm on my kick track and I open up the EQ here, and I want to EQ my kick and my bass together. So if we solo this track, this is our kick drum, so I'll make this. So what I could do is put this EQ on and say, now I want it to EQ my bass. So I see different colors here. So these frequencies and kind of the orangish color are my bass, and these are going to be this kind of bluish green aqua is my primary channel. So if I wanted to EQ my bass now, and jump back to my kick drum and EQ that, and say now to go to the bass. So I think that will probably allow you to do what you want to do with that. So give that a shot, and also, if you wanted to, one other little trick that you could do, let me see. If you click in this little drop down menu, if you want to see two, channel strips open simultaneously, you could undo the follow E buttons for selection channels. So you could see kind of multiple channel edit views open. Again, that's by clicking on this little drop down menu. So once that's checked, it'll automatically select the currently active channel, but you could bypass that and have multiple ones open as well. So give those a quick try, Nima, and let us know how it goes. Okay, so a quick question from Rich Russman. Still on Cubase 7, is there a way to change the output channel on multiple tracks at the same time? So let's say I want to come here and I want to send all these to a new output. So I will come to my audio connections and I'll just add a new bus. So we'll give it a name. So we'll call it Russman. Okay, so if I want to take all of my tracks here, I think we could just do this using the link, the Q link. So I want to take all of my drum tracks and I want to activate Q link, and we do this by holding down Alt or Option plus Shift. So we could do that temporarily or just click on Quick Link. So I'm going to select all my drum channels, let's say, or these drum channels. I'm going to hold down Alt or Option plus Shift and say we're going to send these all to Russman. So now when I come over here, I'll go through all the channels. You see that they're all sent to the same destination. If I want these all to be sent to this, back to, I would select all the tracks and let's send it. And this would work for groups or sends. So now I want all these to be routed to my stereo output. So you could select multiple tracks and send and alter the routing to the same destination, just holding down Alt or Option plus Shift, or just by simply turning on Quick Link in the mix console if you wanted to. Okay. All right, so we have Stephen from the great state of Washington. I miss going there. Okay, so I see kind of some more things from Nima, and the third suggestion is dragging from pool or to line, etc., to be possible. So you could let's give it a shot here. So let's say if I have my pool window open, that we could just drag directly from the pool. So it looks like we could do that. So maybe I'm misunderstanding. And the fourth suggestion is the ability to enable and disable scanning during startup. So I understand why you'd want that, but it also allows Cubase to make sure all the plugins are working as expected, because it's doing like a little bit of diagnostics. I know it could take a little while if you have lots of plugins. But that's kind of also ensuring kind of stability as system changes as well. Okay. But thank you for the suggestions. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. And if you've learned something new, make sure that you hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that. Okay. Okay, so we have a question from Ed Rugman. Hi, Greg. If you have a film cue in Cubase that has to be moved slightly forward or backward in time, what's the easiest method to shift it whilst preserving the relative timings and grid alignments? Okay, so let's go ahead. Let me open up a project. That has some video on it. Okay, so let's say I'm not sure if the video has to. So let's say we have a film cue here. I have video. I have markers. I have tempo track information. So one of the things I would probably do. Let me just add. Is to take maybe the whole cue. Let's say if I select, so if I come here and just, with my range selection tool, let's see if that makes a difference. So this is MIDI, tempo, markers, and video. So let's say if I move, so you can just kind of move all of the contents directly like that. So just doing kind of a select all command. Also just so with, let's say I have it in object selection tool. So just selecting all, and then you could move all of the content just kind of like that. So, and let's say if it's backward in time, we could go to your project setup, and we can set your display bar offset. So set that to, we'll give you like maybe 5. So now we could have kind of all of the events. So I printed basically 5 measures, at the beginning. So now I could select all again and, move all the events concurrently at the same time. So, but if I'm misunderstanding, Ed, just let me know. Okay, so another suggestion from Nima: ability to change sample rate and bit depth or without transforming and converting files. So if you want to change the sample rate, it's going to have to convert the files, I think, naturally. So, there are, you could have it done in the background, and there's a preference for this. So if we go to your Cubase preferences, like where, let's say if we go to editing, I think it's maybe under audio, like, on importing audio files, you could have it automatically use the project settings. But, if you wanted to have audio files switch to different bit depths or switch to different sample rates from the original one, it will have to convert that, obviously. I think that kind of makes sense. And 6, the ability to add waveform display for instrument track with MIDI data. So, if you wanted to do something like that, let's say if I find this particular part, and what I could do is I'm going to select that part, go to my edit menu. And, if you do a render in place, obviously MIDI and audio can be a bit different. So I'm going to say, let's go to my render settings. And what I'm going to do is I could choose to do my complete signal path. And on my source events, I'll just keep the source events unchanged. So just for that particular file, that's now rendered that as an audio file directly underneath. So they're 2 separate events. But what you could do is take the audio and MIDI and just hit Control or Command G, and that would automatically, lock those 2 events together like that. So you can see the MIDI directly above the audio, or you could change the order if that made sense for you. So let's say now I move it out to here, my MIDI and audio are kind of linked. If you wanted to mute the MIDI, you could do that, but that's one method to kind of, keep those 2 things kind of completely intact. So give some of those suggestions a try and let us know. So, all right. So just saying a comment, love the Hangouts, informative, been a user since SX, best DAW. Thank you. I'm glad I'm not wasting my time talking into my laptop here. So I'm glad they've been helpful. Thank you for the kind words. Okay. All right. So seeing lots of new users. That's wonderful. All right. All right. So we see Pablo's indicating he forgot the questions. So hopefully you get it figured out. Okay, so you see a question. Hi, Greg. Hope you're doing great. What's the best way to warp edit audio manually? Not the entire section, but specific notes. When I tried, it moves the entire audio, which is not what I want. So let me just drop a quick loop in. Just... All right, so let's say we have this, and I want to do kind of warping on the audio file. So double click here, and then, we could see it in the sample editor below. So, with the warp, once we activate kind of our warp modes, I'll say, okay, we're going to click on audio warp, and then I'm going to enable free warp. So once I do that, I could, sometimes you may want to just place a little bit of a marker after. So now, and let's say I only want to, move like this audio part without affecting what comes before or after. So at this point, I could just kind of put in, manually put in the warp markers and move those without affecting anything after. So place the warp mark probably at like the next transient, and then you could just drag and do your warp editing without affecting kind of down the road. So give that a try. So just click again after, and then where you want to move. And then if you have it kind of locked at the beginning and at the end, you could just, move those different elements quite easily like that. Okay. So I see a question. Hi, Greg. Without violating any NDAs, can you add any detail about the aforementioned big upcoming projects that we will all enjoy? So I think there's a lot of great new features if I were to speculate, but it's hard not to talk about it without violating any NDAs, and I like my job. So, all right. Let's go ahead and move on. Thanks for the question, Ted. Okay. Okay, so I just see, hi, I'm from Bangladesh. Need your help to know how to gain staging minus 12 dB easily in Cubase. So let's say if I have, let me just jump to a particular project here. So I'll just activate this one quickly. All right, so let's say I wanted to, so I'll put these in my quick link again. So let's say I did everything and I kind of messed up. I need all these faders to be down minus 12 dB. So you could see kind of the fader amount indicated here. So if I want to take all the tracks in my project, so let's say we're at 1. Sorry, I have bad vision. Let's say 1.86. So let's say I want this to be minus 10.14. So I'm going to hold down Alt and Shift, and I'm going to type in minus 10.4 in the faders, and see, then all the faders will drop down by 12 dB. So if that's kind of done for a static mix, that's fine. But if you have like automation going on, and let me just show, that could be a little tricky because the automation will still kind of jump up. So if you have existing automation, and that could be trickier to deal with. So let me just think I have just a project here, some VCAs that could. Okay. All right, so let's say I have like automation going on here. So, and this automation is going up and down. And sometimes this track is going down, the other one's going up in contrary motion. So I'll take this, and if I wanted to drop these all down by 12 dB, the best solution for this type of scenario would be to say, okay, I want to take all of these tracks, select them, and then right click and choose to add a VCA fader to the selected channels. So I'm going to add a VCA fader to the selected channels, and now I could just bring this down. The automation still is kind of present, but now it's just brought down by minus 12 dB or so. So that would be a really quick way. So if you don't have automation, you could do a quick link and just type, 12 dB down into faders, and that works. If you have existing automation, I would route it to a VCA. And some people ask why a VCA versus a group. A group is going to sum the audio. So if you bring it down, that could change the gain structure, especially going into like your effect sends or feeding other groups, whereas the VCA doesn't sum. And so this isn't going to affect the gain structure going into like your effect send. So it's not going to alter the balance between your reverb and other sources. So those are two things that I would, do to just kind of easily knock it down 12 dB. Okay, so we have a question from Sebastian Schubert. Hey guys, a question concerning automating sends pan. When drawing in pan automation on a track and link pan is on, the sends pan won't follow it. Is there an easy way to fix that? So let's go ahead and give it a quick shot here. So let's say I'll just maybe solo this guitar part. Okay, so let's say I have this track and I want to Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and draw in some quick automation here. All right, so here I'll just quickly just kind of draw some, just quickly. Okay. All right, so I'll just kind of draw some in quickly. Okay. So it looks like that's following kind of there, but I think this is this might not be. Let me just make sure it's a stereo track, but so that seemed like it was kind of following the automation there. So, so let me know if I'm doing something differently. Okay. So I see a question. Can you briefly share any tips about guitar reamping to external amps versus VST amp rack? So I'll kind of show you, I have kind of an example here. Let's see if I can find a project quickly where I have some VST amp racks being utilized. Okay, here we go. Okay, so in this case, I have, different guitar parts here. So let's say I have all of these going directly to my VST amp rack. So I'll open up this amp rack. So all the rhythm guitars that we're going to hear will be coming directly from the VST amp rack. So if I wanted to just take this and just so you guys can hear it a little better. All right, so I will. So with this, so the guitars are recorded dry. I know you're looking good. I'm in the neighborhood. So we just solo these. And now through the VST amp rack for both of them. and kind of in context of the project.
But if you're missing me,
So, what, like my friend Fred Corey, who provided this track for me, what he did was just, as a guitar player is in, just as a safety precaution, and I used to do this to analog tape back in the day, is always record a DI track of the guitar, even if you're recording the amp. So just put a DI box in between. Just tell the guitarist if they're not, if they get really wigged out, just tell them it's for impedance or something like that. It sounds like a viable excuse. So, and record the direct signal. Now, if you wanted to send that signal directly to a VST amp rack, you have the ability to do that quite easily, or to just send it out again, through, send that signal and bus it. So say if I wanted to come to my audio connections, I will come over here and just say another input. So on my outputs, I would just say, we're going to add, let's say, a mono out, and we could just call this 2 amp. So I would, if I wanted to reamp the guitar, which is basically to take the clean signal and, simultaneously, send a clean, unaffected guitar. So let's say, this sound. So, and then what you do is just send that, kind of the unamplified sound. And in the outputs here, just send it to amp. And that output is now going to be sent to the amplifier. Add an audio track here. And we'll call this, reamp, Mesa Boogie. So that signal is going to be sent from the track to that output. That output is fed into the guitar amplifier input. The amplifier makes it sound, and then you just simply capture that same guitar signal directly back into a new audio track. And then you have a lot of flexibility, but, just try to always, recording just a quick direct guitar part. Some guitar players can be very, particular with their sounds and tones. So you may have to do this kind of in a very, creative, non-invasive way where, because every time I've done this, a guitar player always comes back to me. He's like, I told you my amp was awesome. Listen to that. And I was like, we didn't use your amp at all. So, but this gives you a bit more control. So those are some tips for, setting up reamping. Okay. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. All right, sorry, my chat timeline just jumped. Let me circle back, my chat field. All right, lots of good discussion today. All right, let me just see if I can maybe catch. I think we lost maybe a couple questions. Sorry about that. Sometimes the chat jumps way ahead. All right, so I'm sorry, I may have lost a couple questions in the chat. It just kind of sometime periodically just jumps up. Okay, so I see Agent K's on a Hangout now. Okay, we see Gareth on the Hangout. All right, he's probably been on for a long time. Okay. Okay, so question 10.5 Pro Win 10. When saving a project, the folder created by Cubase is untitled XX. Is there any way for Cubase to create folders automatically using the project title? Thanks, Bruce. So, when you start a project, because there's a lot of files that when you're recording audio specifically in projects, there's a lot of files that could be generated, like separate, each audio recording could be a separate audio file. So when starting a project, it's always good to, I use the option for prompt for project file, prompt for project location. So when I do a new project, it's now going to ask me, and I'll say create empty. It's going to ask me where I want to save this particular project to. So have a unique folder for each project. And I can't really emphasize that enough, is having a unique folder for each project. So now everything is going to go into that folder that we've defined. And then as you record audio and different sources, you would then just come over here and save the project. And this is where you could give it a name, and that would go directly into the folder that was created. Let's say October 16th, 2020. So, and if you do that, all the folders will automatically be created for you. So I would take that approach and then come over here and doing a new project just to make sure that, within the hub, that your actual prompt for the project location, then you can define it there. Okay. Okay, so we have John McBride from Scotland checking in. That's great. All right, so we see Gareth thanking us for another hangout. It's always great. Okay, Michael Teams wants everyone to whack the like button, so we could do that. Okay. All right, so we have Ramesh, first time joining from Nepal. Welcome, and please ask any questions that you have. Okay. Okay, so I see a question from John Costigan. I was trying to save keyboard commands into a labeled list. When I try to use them, the list name is blanked out. In other words, it seems to choose another unlabeled default list. Hit reset all. Okay, so let's say if I come over here and save my key commands. So I go to edit, and so I will just come here, and so I haven't saved my key commands in a while, sorry. So I'll just click on the store and give this a name. I'm not sure if I understand a question, but I'll just call this October 16th, 2020. So let's say if now when I go to load, here I see the different functions. So I'm not sure if maybe John, I think we have enough time, but maybe if you'd ask the question our way. So to see if I'm doing something wrong, that'd be helpful. Sorry about that. Okay, so question, VST amp rack, hard to choose. Greg, can you advise how to choose an amp, differences between amp racks, etc.? I have 2 guitars, 1 rhythm, 1 solo distortion, how to configure using presets. Thanks, Jen. So, if we wanted to look at some of the different guitar amps, I think I have some kind of different ones set up. Let me see if I have that particular project. Yep, I think we're good. So let me just open this up. So we'll go through some of the different amp models so you can hear it. All right, so the first amp I have, let's say I want, we have a number of different amplifiers. So, ones that look mysteriously like Marshalls, some that look like Fenders, some that look like, Vox amps, so kind of, very kind of classic looking amplifiers. So you're going to have, Tweed. This one looks mysteriously like a Vox or no amplifier, but I'll play a couple of different presets here. So let's say I was going more for, a blues type of vibe with this. So let me revert it because I think I may have changed it up a bit already. So let's say I just want like, and this is all the included effects. So if I wanted different, to switch the amp here. So it looks like a Fender Bassman. So it gives you kind of like maybe on more of a bluesy track. And let's say I want it more of a heavy. And here you're going to have, of course, all your different effects. So that's kind of a classic Marshall type sound with some effects. So more bluesy. So just kind of and if you want like a little bit of bass. So this is like the VST bass amp. So if you want to switch between, it's very much a classic Ampeg. That looks like maybe a Gallien-Kruger, maybe very similar to a Trace Elliott. I think that's kind of very Eden-esque, like a Fender. So some of the classic bass amps, and let's say I want like a lead tone. So this one will be kind of just a Marshall. And just bypassed. Look at this one. So that's direct. And if you want to try different cabinets, or you want to try even another lead tone. let's say you want maybe something a little more tremolo. So this will be like our guitar direct. So another kind of looks Fender-ish to me. But let's say I want maybe a cabinet with a little more low end. And it'd be able to adjust the microphone positions. Again, listen to this dry. And maybe one more lead part. So let's say so this is great for overdrive lead. So that should give you an idea of some of the different tones. But, you know, there's no right or wrong. You know, sometimes, you know, you may just play a Marshall really clean and not overdrive it, get a great tone. And, you know, it could be a cleaner amp that you apply overdrive to. So, you know, no perfect right or wrong, but it gives you kind of a sense of different flavors that you can get with the VST amp rack. Okay, so I see Michael Teams mentioning you finally got Very Audio under control. Woohoo. That's great. Okay, so question, is there a way on chord pads to have it take exactly the chord I play and not interpret it on playback? See next example. Say C, G, let me just move my mouse, C3, G3, C4 to a pad and then save, and then say B2, D3, B3 to a pad, and you see it can't play the chords descending properly, even if I set it to locked after I play it in the chords. So, you know, the chord pads are really going to be kind of intended for, you know, being very, you know, not for specific chord voicings, but it's going to allow you to switch chord voicings quite easily. So let me see if I have this project open here. So I'll just open up quick. I'll just go to another one quickly. So let's say I have my electric piano, you know, so the first thing is, you know, if you have C3, G3, C4, you know, like the chord pads are really intended for, you know, chords, which by definition will be, you know, 3 distinct notes, you know. So if I play this, now one thing that a lot of people miss is that you could, if you go to the setup window here, you could change the voicing options and you could customize it. So if you only want it like triads, you know, you could just, you know, customize. But it's not necessarily going to be, you know, because one of the great things with the chords, if I come here, is you could switch, you know, different tensions or different voicings. So if I come here, you know, so those are all D minor chords. And they want you to be able to kind of, you know, get different voicings using the same chord. So it's not intended where it's going to take this, you know, take the same exact chord and drop it in and be able to trigger that. You probably could, if you're in the setup here, where you could say, I wanted to go to, you know, player options, and then, you know, you could, you know, drop in particular chords. Let me just see if it's. So, maybe even if you have just a pattern, so let's say, so let me just see if I come over here. I don't think this will work, but maybe if we have just a quick pattern. All right, so I'll just kind of take these and just. Okay, so let's now, if I want to just take that and drag that particular part to a chord pad. So yeah, so that's kind of the intention, is not necessarily to have the exact chords, but just the chords, because the chord pads want you to be able to manipulate and change the voicings of it. But I'll mention that to the development team, that's something that would be something you'd want to do. Okay. Okay, so I just see a question. Hey, my Cubase 10.5 Pro is on German and there's no bus channel to create. Why? Okay, so my and there's no bus channel. So it seems, if you wanted to create like an effects channel track, you could add just an effects channel track like this. So let's say I want to add RoomWorks in, and then other tracks could be sent directly to RoomWorks as a reverb. But I'm not sure what the German part has to do with it, but it should. But maybe I'm misunderstanding, but you should be able to, it's not necessarily, so you could have effects channels. So generally Cubase doesn't use the term bus. You could have, add an effects channel track or add a, like a group track. And, so your group track could be used to sum, send multiple tracks to this, move the group track volume down. So you can have access to, your particular group track if you want it, or you could have your effects channel track, which could have, effects processors on it. So, but if I'm misunderstanding, just let me know. Okay. Okay, so I see from Captenergy Music. Hey, Greg, thanks for all you do. And I wanted to let you know I found a bug in Backbone Windows. If you try to open samples from the file system, the file list does not populate. So I'll just try it real quick on Mac. So I'm not sure if you're adding samples. If you try to open samples from the file system, the file list does not populate. So it looks like I'll just go ahead and load up a quick preset here. So, but I could go ahead and check that out. If you want to send me an email, I could try it on my Windows platform. If you wanted to send me a quick email to clubcubase@steinberg.de, and I'll take a look at it. So you see maybe Jazz Dude understood correctly. It says my Cubase 10.5 Pro is on German, and there's no bus channel to create. So if you wanted to switch the language, so if you want to change if your Cubase is booting up in German as opposed to English, go to your preferences and under General. And here you could choose your language that you want. So and I think it defaults to like what your language is set to on your operating system. So question, is there a way to differentiate multiple identical USB controllers? Can I rename them with a number suffix? So I'm trying to think. I don't have two identical controllers to test, but often that's kind of handled, I think, by the operating system level of the driver. So I'm not sure. I'll take a quick look, see if maybe under the MIDI port setup, if we could do anything to set it up. I don't have two identical controllers to kind of test with, but I think that might be tied directly into at the operating system level on how the driver for the MIDI device would incorporate into at the operating system. But let me just... Yeah, so I think that's kind of an OS level thing, but trying to think if I have two of the same controllers. I just have kind of separate ones, but I could see if I could do some more research on that. But I think it's going to be down to how the driver itself will kind of change. But, and so there isn't, I don't know a way to rename it inside of Cubase because it's ties pretty closely to the OS. Okay, so question, when I render in place a VST instrument, I can't transpose the WAV file. Why? It's going to be different than the MIDI, but you should be able to still transpose. So let's say I have this. So let's say I want to do a render in place of that. So I'll just go to my edit menu to render in place. And I'll just say let's do our complete signal. Let's just do, let's say, channel settings. So I'll come here, render that. So let's say now so if I wanted to transpose, I could just select the audio from the info line. But it's not going to follow from the MIDI transposition. So you'd have to come here and you could just transpose directly from the info line. So give that a try. But, by default, generally, like, if you have a transpose track, you could have that automatically, then the audio will do that, but you could do it for audio, it's just handled a little differently than MIDI. Okay, so just saying comment from Mark Rabin. Thank you, Greg, to help me. Sometimes the Groove Agent UI user UX leaves me puzzled. I appreciate your lessons. Be safe, y'all. Great, glad that helped. Okay, just reading through comments. Okay, lots of great discussion going on. So apparently lots of people are using even if they live in Germany, are running Cubase in English. So it's interesting. It used to be that Cubase only came in English, and then it's been localized for different countries. So I just see comment. I wish Cubase update the insert, same like on Studio One. You can jump from insert to insert very fast. I think there's a key command for that. So let's give it a shot. Let's. I don't know how Studio One does it. Thought I saw something. But I think I remember that there's maybe like a tabbed insert, so you could kind of access multiple inserts. So I think I understand what you're saying with that, Don. So okay. And I think Studio One concept they actually kind of nicked from Wavelab. So okay, so I think I saw an email coming about Backbone, so I'll check that after the Hangout. Okay, so I see. Hi, Greg. I assigned a VCA fader to several tracks. How do I add a track to that same VCA fader? All right, so let me jump back to a different project. All right, and I'll just revert. All right, so let's say if I have, let me just add an insert or add a VCA fader. Okay, so that's our VCA. So I want to take these three tracks. Okay, let me just All right, so I'll just add a VCA to those particular tracks. And I want to say that there is a trick to do this. All right, so now all you have to do is, let's say I have these 3 tracks are being routed to this VCA. So I come here and adjust a VCA. We see these 3 tracks going down in volume. If I want this track to join that VCA, I just kind of click in the linked group, and then we'll include this in link 1. So now as I do this, this track is now added to that VCA. So at that point, you could just adjust the VCA, and that will take care of all the different parameters. Hang on just one sec. I have to adjust my contact lens. All right, so let's move on. So hopefully it helps. So again, it could be a little subtle, but you just kind of go at the top here, Fuji, and you'll see that you could include it in the different link groups. And as you adjust, you could add the different tracks to that VCA. So hopefully that helps. Good to see you on the Hangout. Okay, so hi Greg. In Cubase in the browser preview listening to third-party MIDI loops, is it possible to recognize which chord it plays and then maybe change it before dragging into the project? So I think we discussed this on some other Hangouts. So, one, I don't know of many third-party MIDI loops, but to do the preview with the chords, it's not going to determine the chords of the preview in the preview window. So if I wanted to, just go over here to different loops, I'll sneak home. And I'll go to my loops and browsers. I think there's some MIDI loops here. So as we do this, not within the browser. So if I want to come here, we could just play this. It's not going to, be able to change the chords there. We would have to kind of drop in the MIDI loop and then do the chord detection analysis there. So, in the same manner, we don't edit within the preview. We don't print scores from within the preview window. It kind of needs to be, imported or inserted into the project. So. Okay, so just see kind of a further clarification from Mark Rabin. Greg, per this question, after drums mix down, seems I'm off a millisecond or so. So, the export audio mix down, generally is going to be sample accurate. So maybe it could be, check also if you have the constrained delay compensation on, because sometimes plugins will report incorrect latency. So if there's plugins on the master bus or somewhere in the signal path, that might cause it. But you could also just, zoom in, take the 2 tracks and zoom in to the MIDI event and to the sample and see if they're aligned there. So I've never seen Cubase kind of, export it to a different time. But if you're running different effects processors and, sometimes they might be, I've seen plugins report their latencies incorrectly or inaccurately, and that could cause issues like you described. So, but, just kind of dial it in, and you could, select the start of the event and see it in the info line and see exactly where it starts. To see a comment, I've been using Cubase since 2012 and I'll still be finding new things within the DAW. So that's true. I learn new things all the time. So, all right. So, okay, so we have a question from Jan at cubaseindex.com. So more about Groove Agent, drag and drop a pattern pad to a drum track. The name of the section will be named the track name, not the pad name. I wish the section name became the pad name. So let's see if there's any way to perhaps do that. Let's take a quick look. Just look for a project I was working with. Okay. Okay, so I'll just come right over here. Let's say we have our Groove Agent track. So I'll just hit the pattern. All right, so this is called main one, and I drag it to the track, and it's going to carry over the name of the track. So when we do this, I think the reasoning why, and I understand why you'd probably want that. I mean, you could obviously just select the event and quickly rename it, but I understand the desire to have, to have the name from the pattern being dragged over. But in essence, what I think it's doing is dragging the MIDI file over, and there's no provision in the MIDI file for individual parts, just not part of this specification, but, doesn't mean that it can't be done. That's a good suggestion. So it might be a nice preference for that. So thanks, Jan. Okay. So I think this is one of the questions that was mailed in, but it's also being asked in the Hangout. Probably from Vikas. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. No disrespect. So there's an option in preference to set the transport menu, return to start position on stop. Now, is there a quick, easy way to toggle this option by creating a shortcut? So if you're not familiar with this concept, we could say, as we play, if I hit space bar to play, and then I stop, that it could go directly to where we started when I hit the space bar. So when I stop, it goes to where we started. Now, there's also a preference. If you come over here to preferences to transport, and then there's a return to start position on stop preference. So we can say return to start position on stop. So now if I apply that preference, we could toggle this behavior. So we could have it do that. Let's adjust that preference. So we hit the space bar, and for some reason it seems to always be, I'll just do a new project. For some reason. All right, so I hit play. All right, so now when I stop, it stops right at that position and continues on. Sometimes you may want it to and now it goes back to where we started. So now it returns to where we started. So sometimes you may want to toggle this behavior. And to do this, we could go to your key commands, and we could basically activate and deactivate that particular preference with a key command. So go to key commands, to preferences, and I usually have this set to shift start or shift plus spacebar. So here you'll see playback toggle, or I'm sorry, return to start position on stop. So I hit shift plus spacebar. We see the preference deactivate it. And when I stop, it's going to stop right where it is. Now, if I hit that shift plus spacebar again, now when I stop, it's going to go to where we started. And then toggle the preference. So we see that indicated right there. Then it's going to continue on. So go to your key commands, to preferences, and then so you'll see transport, return to start position on stop, and I use shift plus space. And that way, if you're like doing editing of vocals, you may want to just, do an edit, go back, listen to it again, move on. Okay, I want to stop here, I need to do a vocal edit, and then be able to toggle that status very quickly. Okay, let's move on. See, Gareth likes my comment of when it's ready for new releases, so... So we have a question: can you use Cubase for live performance like Cakewalk, Logic, or Ableton? Definitely, we have people doing it all the time. So we have entire shows have done it. Hans Zimmer was using it for his tours. He once told me it was the 19th member of the band. It was Cubase, and it was switching all the presets, handling the virtual instruments, and doing lots of stuff. So people are using it for live, every day. Used to be more when we had more live concerts, but yeah, definitely you could use it for live performance. I see a great comment from Sub403. Every time I try a different DAW, I always feel like I'm being unfaithful to Cubase, and I would really hate to F up our relationship. That's good. Just don't try another DAW. It's really easy. You don't have to feel guilty. So, okay. So I just see how can I join to the Hangout chat? So just like that comment is part of the Hangout chat. So I see Don that you've been going through. You've already had some comments, so I think you're in the Hangout chat already. All right. See Colin Tabors indicating he's been a Cubase user since the 20th century. That's good. Newbie. All right. And seeing someone commenting to Sub403, Cubase is your wife. Never mess that relationship up. All right. Okay. So second question, is there a shortcut to delete all previous takes, leaving only the last one? What you could do, if, let's say if I'm in here, and let me just set my... Put that back there, and I'll do just a couple of passes of recording. Okay, so we'll do just a couple passes here. All right, so as we do this, we could just say, all the different files are underneath. One quick way of doing this is just to do a delete overlaps. I think this would work. So if you come to audio, I think it's going to be under advanced. Just choose delete overlaps, and then all the events that are. No. All right. So even if you go to the pool, and we have separate audio file, it's all going to be. Let me just see if it was indicated it was in a cycle recording. Okay. So let's say I'll just come here. I'll just take out of a cycle recording. So I'll just record. Just turn off the click quickly. So let's say I record. Come back here. Record. And let's say I just recorded several passes here. Okay, so, if we want to, and let's say I'll just do a quick recording. Okay, so let me see if the delete overlaps works in this scenario. So, but if you go, I think what you could do is just go to the pool and like if, you have, different files, if I only wanted this particular file, you could do a remove unused files. And here we could just say remove from pool, and all the files that were kind of in the background won't be there. So you could do that kind of in the project, or just, if you look at your various lanes, you could also just take these and, just say, okay, I want to get rid of those and keep this one file. Then that goes into your trash of your pool. We try to make it, there's a lot of times people inadvertently mess up and delete unnecessary files. So we try hard to be able to recover and make it kind of like a two-step process. Okay, so just kind of a further question from the same person. Would be great if you can walk through or point to a video on how to effectively do multiple take recordings and keep the best recording take. So we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. There's one I did on comping, but could show you the same thing again here. I'll go ahead and revert. Okay, so let's say I've done multiple takes. I open up the lanes here. So these are all of my recordings. Okay, and if we want to, at this point, grab the little hand tool, this will allow us to select different parts. You could select different takes. You could audition if hold down Control. So you could audition each one quite easily and be able to just kind of come here, and with the hand tool, that will automatically split and mute the other parts. So, and you could audition directly here. So you could just, as we showed at this point, here, I think if we do the delete overlaps, that we could have the different parts automatically taken into advance. So say now, then all those parts have been comped together. And now when we come over here, all of the other parts, since we did the delete overlaps, will be kind of eradicated. So we have those selected, and again, just you could just do that type of stuff. So play around with once you have the stacked recording, grab the comp tool and start comping away. So not the object selection tool, but rather the comp tool. It looks like a hand, and just go to town just like that. So it'll be fast once you get the hang of it. So okay. Okay, just reading through. All right, so Jeremy checking in from Seattle. See Jazz Dude, shout out to Jan, does great work. Okay. I just see higher resolution scaling. Been waiting for too many years for this. Okay. Not sure which scaling it's referring to. All right. So I see question. Hey, Greg, can you touch on how to get the most out of density that's in the control panel? I used it on a piano and it literally gave it a different rhythm. Okay. So let me just take a quick look and see what the density is. I'm not sure which control panel it's part of. Let me just so I don't know I don't know where the density is in the control panel. Maybe if you could specify that, it'll save me a couple minutes from looking for it. We should be able to get to it within the Hangout. So sorry about that. But let me just check if it's maybe in the MIDI modifiers, because you mentioned like a piano part. So I'll add an instrument track. Yeah, so if you could let me know what density control panel it is, that would be helpful. Okay, so let's move on. Maybe Cubase not crashing every other time I close it down. So generally, if it's going to be crashing every other time, that's probably pretty indicative of a plugin that's causing that. That's not releasing from memory. Often, if you have 10.5.2, it may start up in a like a recovery mode, like a safe start mode, and it may indicate at top which plugin is causing it. But generally, that's a pretty good sign that there's a plugin that's not releasing memory. So. All right, so just see yeah, and also just see a further comment or not losing the audio settings on 24 channels. I don't have to reassign them each time. So, if you're having crashing problem, so it could be a plugin that's the culprit. So I would kind of look there, and I think that would solve kind of both problems for you. See comment from PM O'Sullivan. I got to CC 121 after asking about it here. It makes me feel like I actually know what I'm doing. So that's cool. All right, so we also see a comment from Captain Proton 1, 4K monitor and almost impossible to use at native resolution unless you set it to 2 times scaling, then it's insanely too big. So I think, they're working on, I know there's been a lot of discussion on kind of different scaling options. It's obviously a huge undertaking for, such a big program as Cubase, having to rewrite all the windows, but, and also making sure how to accommodate plugins that don't offer high DPI, which is a lot of different plugins as well. But I know we may see some progress on that in the future. See a comment from Don Vito. The CC121 was my first controller. It's amazing. Yep, I still have one in my studio. It's always my left hand, so it's a great controller. So just saying kind of a further comment on the kind of lyrics and words, and where I was showing kind of the vocal chopping before. So it says, regarding lyrics and time signature, I believe that you accidentally missed the first part. The whole thing is a feature request aimed at word processor, syllable process, define time signature. So if I just, let me just do a new project here. All right, so just... All right, so say I just have this.
What a stupid way to start a fight. Take your record.
So I don't think there's anything that will currently kind of do what you want. I understand the feature request. So, if I want it to come here, let's say, see if there's a tempo detection. So sometimes tempo detection algorithms will be more beat based, and that's not what vocals are kind of working with. So let me just import a different, see if I think I have a different vocal. Oh, sorry, messed that up. Let me just reopen my Cubase. Okay, so but there's nothing that really kind of does that. So, so with time signatures, it's going to be very tough just from a vocal part. But yeah, you could definitely, I'll pass it along, but it's probably a lot of work to go into something. So. Okay, seeing some comments on Steinberg support in Europe. So, So I hear lots of good things about the support as well. I'm sorry if you had a bad experience, but hopefully you could ask questions here on the Hangouts if you're having problems. But sorry you had that experience. Okay, so just see question using spectral layer Cubase. Can't the settings of spectral layers be saved when opening the project later? You go on with the project. So let's go ahead and take a quick look. I'll just do a new file here. I'll just do a quick test tone in here. Give me just a second. Generate a quick audio file. Sorry, on the wrong channel. Sorry about that. I'll just drop a loop in quickly here. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look, see if we can save the project with the spectral layers kind of in progress. So could be something that needs to be committed to through ARA2. So let's say I will just cut that out. So okay, so I'll take this and I'm just gonna bounce a selection. Right, so I'll just do that edit. Close the project. Open the project. So it looks like it will kind of commit to it. So it will commit to it right there, but it may not leave it in the same state where you're editing it. So. All right, so Sven, I'm just kind of reading through all your comments on support. So I'm sorry that you ran into that. I will kind of save I'll try to copy over some of the chat here. and pass it on to them. So let me just copy the text now. I'm sorry that you had problems with that. But I know that they've been a bit backlogged with a lot of the different aspects, kind of dealing with pandemic stuff and working from home. But I hear lots of positive things about it as well. But I'll go ahead and just kind of make a quick note of this. Give me just a second and just copy it over what you wrote so I could pass it on. Okay, so I copied that so I could have the full thread. So sorry that happened to you, but we also do these hangouts pretty regularly. So hopefully we can help you here if you're unable to get the support you want from the European support team. All right. Okay, just going on through some different comments here. Okay. Okay, just reading through comments about different monitors people are using. Okay, going through comments. Okay, so we have a question. Can I move the MIDI file and the automation from it at the same time? So let's say we have an instrument track. I'll say I'll just load up a quick sample here. All right, so let me just draw some notes in, and I'll go to automation. All right, so say I have, I think by default it's set up so that the automation moves with the event, and this might be under edit menu. You want to just check automation follows events. So if you're doing that from the project window, you can see that as you move the events, that the automation will be tied to that. If that is unchecked, I move the automation. I move the event, the automation stays the same. So as soon as I come over here, so we can, sorry, my keyboard is acting a little strange on me. I use it to switch between multiple computers, so sometimes I'm on the wrong computer. So now if I come over here, we undo that and we re-enable from the edit menu, automation follows events. And now the automation will just follow the MIDI event. So give that a try. So you just see how long has Greg been doing this? So I've been with Steinberg 28 and a half years. I've been doing Hangouts for about 4 years. So, and we kind of boosted it up during pandemic. So we used to do like 1 a month and 2 a month, and now we're trying to do 2 a week. I know we had some time off this last week. I've been working on some special projects. So, but yeah, so try to provide a lot of great resources. And I've been a part of Yamaha. Someone else was asking ever since Yamaha acquired Steinberg. So, so that was 2005. So about 15 and a half years. And as Jazz Dudes mentioned, some of the original Hangouts were on. So we're on the Club Cubase YouTube channel. But Steinberg kind of had changed their strategy, so we kind of moved it all to the Steinberg channels. So I guess 9 years. I've been doing videos for maybe 9 years, and the Hangouts maybe for 4 or 5. To see a funny comment from Agent K. Will there be a VST plugin in Cubase 11 called 21st Century Greg, where it generates melodies to inspire us? So hopefully not, because Gareth is probably very talented to make my random gibberish make musical sense. Okay, so I just see, what is that Control G lock method? I've never seen that. So if you have, what Control G does is lock events together. So if I always want these 2 events to move as a single entity, I could group them together. So I'm going to just select Shift, and then let's say if I move these events here, I'll just copy. So at this point, I could say I want these 2 events to be grouped. So I just hit Control or Command G, and as I move one, these will always be tied together. And you could group kind of, non, and to ungroup it, just hit Command or Control U, and that will ungroup, and now they will move together. And you'll see kind of this little light, and you can do non-contiguous events as well. So if I have this part and this part selected, I could Control G or Command G, and I could move those together and link these together. So this way I could move these together, move those different parts together, and when I need to undo it, just ungroup, and now they're all completely independent of each other again. So it's a great editing function. So okay, so question, I'm trying the region saving to the pool, but it's freeform highlighting. This selection is out of the timeline in a comp track. How to align regions to cuts exactly tail to head. So the regions I showed, aren't going to show up in the pool because it wasn't kind of done in a region editor. So let's jump back. To our comping again. Okay. So, when we select the event here, we could define regions here. But since this was done in kind of like a loop recording, we can see each of the recordings as one long file. So let's So again, when, working, let's say I just grab the comp tool here. Again, that will cut and mute the other events, but it's not necessarily going to make these into regions. So if I want to say that's my comp right there. So, and as you used a comp tool, Dank, I think that will kind of do head to tail as you indicate right there. So I'll just come and I'll just try the delete overlaps one more time. So let me select all these events here. And again, depending how it's recorded, if you did this in a cycle record, it's not 6 separate audio files, but it's going to be different takes, and it's going to be kind of one long audio file. But if you recorded them as separate, distinct, if you stopped and didn't do it in cycle record, then they're separate files. So now when I come over here, everything's in one lane and all the parts were just kind of eradicated that weren't there. And if I undo a couple times, I could get back to all the files. And if I eradicated it and want to blow those files out all the time, just go to your pool window and, remove unused files. I just see a comment from Pablo. You have a better memory than me, Greg. I do have a good memory. It's kind of it's a curse because you can't really choose what to memorize. So I can remember someone's keyboard setup that I met in 1993, so I'm sure my ever expanding hard drive will crash one day. All right, so I just see, question from JVI, question from last time I asked about the key editor. For me, it always opens in a new window in the second monitor as I want, but I cannot find the always on top for the key editor. So I think it might be, let me just check something really quick. But I think with the new system, it might not be able to do that because you could have kind of always on top in the main window. But let me just take a quick look with this. So let me just create a MIDI part here. We'll take a quick look. Okay, so I think I got my control room way down here, so let me just. All right, so I will just put in some MIDI data really quick. This will be my contribution to Gareth's musical composition this weekend. So. All right, so I will. All right, so now when we double click and we go into our separate window. So I think I couldn't find it last time either. Let me just take a quick look if I... And it could have been when some of the new MIDI handling was implemented that it may have been one of the things that didn't transfer. But I want to say it's usually kind of... So I don't see the always on top either. I'll play around with it some more over the weekend. If you want to email me at clubcubase at steinberg.de, then I'll do some more research on it. Sorry about that. I know it's inconvenient. To see a comment, I hope in Cubase 11 they give us the options to delete MIDI notes just by clicking on it with the right mouse button. I think it's kind of makes sense to have the right mouse button for tools, but you know, maybe there'll be some other things coming. We'll see when it comes out. Okay, so we have a question from Ted. Good to see you on a Hangout. If I record controller data for MIDI plugin Auto LFO at the maximum rate, can I increase that rate by compressing or shrinking the controller data part size? So let's give it a quick try here. Okay, so let's say I have some... So let's say I have LFO going on for both panning and volume here. All right, so let's say, so you have it at the maximum rate. Can I increase the rate by compressing or shrinking? So let's say if I go directly to my MIDI editor here. And let me just do a freeze MIDI modifiers. So I could see my LFO incorporated here. So I'll just make this into full screen. All right, so let me just... And I'll just kind of take these are the settings applied by the LFO, and then you could compress or expand the values of those. So if I wanted to tilt, you could also just kind of go to the right corner here and kind of tilt the LFO. So this could be your panning if you want it to be more extreme. So you could do stuff like that. So this would be our volume. So you could definitely do that for kind of, editing. So the trick to get the LFO data from the particular part into, from the MIDI insert directly into the event is just go to your MIDI to freeze MIDI modifiers. And that will kind of basically take that data and put it into the event itself. Okay, so I just see a comment from Gareth. I just hope the D3 D10 warp.dll issue is fixed in a new update. So I'm not familiar with that, but I could check with that and see what it is. All right, so I just see Jazz Dude saying keep Cubase great, and that's always a good thing. So one thing also, if you've learned something new, make sure that you hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that. Okay. All right. So I just see add some more scales to chord pads. So generally the chord pads aren't necessarily based on scales, but let's go take a quick look. So, if you want to work with different scales, let's come over here and I'll just add a quick chord track. So I will. All right, and we'll say our scale here. But there's so when you click here, there are lots of different scales that you could use for the chord tracks that can be based on it. So make sure that you play with those. So you may have to, turn off automatic scales. So disable that, and then you can click on the scale icon, and to view the scales, just click there, and you'll see a drop-down list of a number of different scales. All right, so just see a question. Is there a setting for allowing MIDI parts to be resized without losing notes that are too long? Okay, let me see, make sure I understand this. So let's say if I have this part here, okay, so setting for allowing MIDI parts to be resized without losing notes that are too long. So one of the sizing settings that the MIDI parts will also work on sizing modes of the object selection tool. There's 3 different modes where we could choose to, take the end of the note and kind of trim in the default mode, or we could choose to make this do a sizing moves content, where we can say I want to resize but keep the beginning or the end as we see fit. And also the third mode is sizing applies time stretch. So if you say I need that MIDI information to fit into that amount of time, you could do that. So see if one of those alternate sizing modes that a lot of people don't use on MIDI could maybe work for you. So okay. Okay, just reading through comments. So lots of great comments. All right, and I think my chat field just jumped on me. Let me scroll back. So a lot of discussion today. Okay, so sorry, I may have lost some questions. Okay, so I see. Hi, Greg. Using and loudness analyzer to make the mix best level for export. Example, Spotify using auto gain, but without add mastering to the song is not as loud as tracks from professional. Any idea what to do? So one thing that you could do if you needed to take a particular file, and I'll just drop a quick piece of audio in. You know. So let's say if I have an audio file, one of the things that you can do, just to kind of check the overall loudness, one is if you go to statistics, you can find out exactly kind of what the file is. So go to select a file, go to your audio, and then go to statistics. So here you can see exactly, what your loudness is in dB and the loudness units. So this is at like minus 14 loudness units. But if you wanted it, and that's probably like a good spot for Spotify, that's kind of the levels that you'd want it to be at roughly, unless they've changed it recently. But when I come to also my offline processes and you choose normalize, since version 10.5, you could say, I want to normalize to, specific, you could do it by peak level, or you could say by overall loudness. So I could say, I want this to be, minus 6 loudness units. And that will automatically just, normalize your audio. So that's the first thing I would try. So I think Spotify is like, minus 14 LUFS is kind of what they shoot for. So, just take your 2-track mix and try to, make sure that you do the audio processes. You could also just do this by hitting F7 to go to the direct offline processor and be able to have that setting there. That's the first thing I would check out. And then beyond that, it's going to be really mixing, people are manipulating dynamics, people, the arrangement can make a big difference, the type of sounds that you're using. So try those different things. Okay. Okay, so I just see what is the best way to browse samples? So as we, I like the media bay, and I've seen lots of people, like I was just, last week I was helping producer, like a big thing, I was helping out with some different producers like Zed and Ink or Patrick. And, they're, both kind of media bay junkies, especially Ian. So at this point, you could just say, I wanted to come over here. I want to look for bass. I want it to be electric bass. And you could just kind of come over here and choose different samples. So let's say I want to go to a particular library. So I want Soul Assembly, and I'm looking for bass sounds here. So I could just... And this is routed through the control room. So if you don't hear this, and let's say, I think that's cool. You could actually just right click and say, you could reveal it in Finder, or you could just say create sampler track. And now that you've done that, you can just now start to play that particular sound. So you just come over here and everything that you just started playing can now... So, I think using the media bay is a really, easy way to, audition different sounds, loops, super fast and easy. You could have that also automatically audition in the project tempo. You could have, while you're playing your song, you could audition and have it sync to the beat. So lots of great stuff that you could do. Okay, so I see a question. How can I save very audio edits? Sometimes change audio pitch after edit. So, if we've done a number of very audio type stuff, we just jump to a different project here quickly. Okay, so let's say I am in my very audio editor. So let's say I jump here. Let's get to. So let's say I see my very audio. I've done all my edits and tweaks. So I'll just come right there. We have that. And now if, you want it to, just make sure I'm not rereading. How can I save the very audio? So now that we have this all done, if you wanted to basically lock that in, you can go to your functions menu here and choose to flatten real-time processing. And that will kind of lock in all the settings into the audio file. One thing I like to do before, just in case as a safety precaution, it's so easy to do, is to just, take all of my vocal files and bounce it to a new file and then edit that so my original is intact and I'm kind of just tuning, so if someone's like, I just don't like this one note, and you've committed to it, you have the original file there. It's easy enough to do. But if you have everything configured and set up, you come right over here to the very audio. And at that point, under the functions menu, just choose to flatten real-time processing. Okay. You see a comment from Gareth. I truly found the Cubase amp stuff better than Waves GTR. So yeah, the Cubase amp simulators are really, shockingly good. I've gotten to work with Michael Wagner a lot. He's based in Nashville now, and he's, done, like all the classic hard rock records of the 80s, and continuing on to still doing cutting edge stuff. So, like Master of Puppets by Metallica, and Skid Row and Dokken, and, and he's a guitarist engineer, and he's, often commented that his favorite software amp, he's a big Kemper Profiler fan, but his favorite software amp is the VST amp rack that comes with his Nuendo. So don't discount it because it's included. So. Okay. Okay, so lots of great comments. I've seen comments on the guitar amp simulator, the VST amp rack. Okay, hi Greg, what is the best way to save my sends and inserts of specific track for later use? Okay, so I'll set up a new project here. So this could be like a kind of a good use for track archives. So let me just... All right, so let's say I have different effects processing going on here. So I will put on let's say an EQ. So let's do something. And let's put on a flanger plugin. Where this will be as a flanger for that. And I want to add an effects end. To the selected channel. Let's just add a bit of verb. So now I have so say I have inserts, EQs, and my channel strip, and I want to be able to call this all up in a project later. So really, I think if I just select these two, let's come over here and export selected tracks. And we'll just say I'll reference media files where we can copy the media files as well. Okay, so I'll just call this October 16. Save it to my desktop, my messy desktop, and come over here. I will get rid of all. I'll close this project. It won't save. I'll do a new project. And I will choose to import what's called a track archive. So I'll come to my desktop. I think it's October 16th.xml. We'll select all the files, hit OK, and then the reverb is still there. So we go to the track. It's still feeding the reverb via send. It still has the flanger, still has the EQ, still has the media. So when you do like a track archive, the track arc, if it didn't have a send effect, you could do a track preset. But if it's kind of being coupled and tied and the audio routed to another track, to like an effects end or a group, we could select the effects end and the source track and have both of those selected, save it as a track archive, and that could be imported later. Okay. So it says using a kick drum sample directly as audio track, or B as sampler track. Any difference in sound quality? It seems that the kick audio track is more punchy. I think it's going to be the same exact sound quality. It's just going to, there could be volume differences between the two. So once you do that, so that could be hard to make an exact, just an exact comparison for, but there's no real difference in audio quality. Okay. Okay, just reading through comments. Thanks for all the great comments. If you learned something new, make sure you hit the like button. See how we're doing on time. Okay, we're doing well. All right, so about another hour or so. I finished like 20 seconds early last time, but then 20 seconds got added on. So my closed captioning for other languages was messed up. Okay, so see John Costigan, who asked about the presets for the key commands. Says, thank you, Greg, was not completing the list save after entering the new key command. Thanks for your patience. It's no problem at all. Glad you got it figured out. Okay, so Andy LaSalle, I'm a Cubase 10.5 user, new fellow. Great, thanks for joining us on the Hangout. So just see question, if you have Cubase, you really don't need scale or any Chord VSTs. I think a lot of those came from other programs that didn't have Chord tracks. So I see Gareth indicating that German reverb has perfect timing. So I just see, from Andy, please do that again for adding a universal effect track, please. So, what you could do is just right click, add, this is probably in reference to something I did an hour and a half ago. But now that you have your plugins, you could add your effects track and say, okay, I want this to be a delay. So let's say I want it to be just a mono delay and have that in, and then any track could then be sent directly to that delay. So at this point, you could just do it like that. But if I'm misunderstanding Andy, just let me know. To see comment, all other DAWs steals from Cubase, and Cubase always stay humble and still being great and legendary. So I think it's, fair to say that Cubase has, really been kind of the innovative solution over the years. So I see a question, is Backbone standard on 10.5 Pro? Backbone is actually sold as a separate add-on plugin. So I think it's about $150 or so in the US, but you may, depending where you live, you could check the price on your local dealer or Steinberg online shop. Okay. All right, good to see Ace on a Hangout. Okay, so hi, Greg. Hope you're doing well. I am, thanks. In Cubase Pro, how do I import a sample wave and create a patch and save it so it'll play notes normally across the keyboard without sound speeding up? Okay, so let's say I wanted to take this drum loop. So let's just listen to it. So I think our tempo, the drum loop is 96 BPM. So just enter that in our tempo. So I'm going to create a sampler track. So we say sampler, and I'm just going to drag the audio file in. So at my root area here, so when I look at it, we could play that. So I hit the key, we trigger the sample, and if I play higher, the sample speeds up with the higher pitch. So this is our kind of root tempo. And if I play it an octave higher, it's going to play twice as fast. So if I do it low, and this is how people do interesting sound design. But if I wanted to play back at different pitches without changing it, and this is a bit hidden, you could go to the audio warp tab, and we'll just put it on music. So and let's just say I come here, and now as I play the sample, it's going to change the pitch, but not change the tempo. So without audio warp activated, I bypass that, turn audio warp on, plays the same tempo, but the pitch that you actually use to trigger the sample. Okay, so we just had a quick request with the chord pads showing kind of, circle of fifths as we go to add chords to chord pads. So if I wanted to actually just kind of click here and this little icon to the left of the chord pad, there's a couple of different ways of being able, and it's probably not let me choose something that's a little more appropriate for that. So we're not playing chord pads and drum patterns. Jump back here. Okay, so, as we want to, go to the chord pads, you could choose, different ways of being able to assign, so you do kind of your chord pads directly there. But as we want to add chords and you want to just come over here, so you could go to the chord assistant and then you could choose based on, just drop some chords in first here. So I'll just go to my chord editor. So say I start with F. So now when I go to the chord assistant, you could choose based on, let me just get another chord. So now as we do this, you could see chords that will be based on proximity. So these chords are more closely related harmonically than these chords, and these are kind of more of the outlier chords. And if you do like jazz, one of the cool things is you could just do circle of fifths. So I could, as I want to audition the different chords, and you could rotate and just try out kind of new, fresh chord ideas and see how they're related musically by proximity, by circle of fifths, or you could, have the chord assistant or just, try different chord voicings here and just say, okay, I want this. Or just kind of play random notes and you could have the MIDI input captured. So and you could, have the chord determined that way. So, very advanced. And I think the guy, developer does that. It's like a real music theory. He's like really, knows his theory stuff very well. We've had like, great discussions on, chords and scales over the years. So. Okay, and then a follow-up to Ace's question, about the sampler track. So say if I'm here, one thing that people miss a lot if we have the sampler track. So again, put it into audio warp mode. And then when you want to save it as a preset, you just kind of click here and it will save as a track preset, as a sampler track. And then you could just kind of access it, add tracks, and add sampler track presets for you. So just right here is where you could save the actual track preset. Okay, so see a question from Paul Claridge. Good to see you on the Hangout, Paul. Hello, Greg, again. In Groove Agent, why are there 8 selections above the pads that I can use these to put patterns on? What are those for? When I click, some are empty. When I save, some are patterns are selected. So when we go to the chord, when we see our patterns here, so we see these 8 selections, these are 8 different banks. So within the MIDI specification, you have 128 MIDI notes. So, you may have more than, if you have the full Groove Agent, you'd see 128 patterns as well as different instrument sounds. So you can think of this as 1 through 16, 17 through 32, 33 through, 48, 49 through 64, etc. So, these just allow you to quickly access, all 128. So we can think of this as a bank of 16. And if you look at the like MIDI notes here, as I select different banks, each of these notes will change to indicate what exact MIDI note is triggering that particular pad. So it's not just 16 notes, it's 8. These are triggering 8 banks, each bank containing 16 MIDI notes. So hopefully that's clear. And it's the same for patterns or sounds. Okay. Seeing an interesting discussion if people like country music or not. So All right. So we see a question from Andy LaSalle. How can I put my mixer into the bottom window when I want, please? So let's say, you have your mix console open here. Okay, so generally, all you have to do is kind of just click on the mix console. If you wanted to kind of elevate it up, you could click here to elevate it up. And there's usually like a little down arrow. Let me see if I could find it here. So, or if you just, I think if you just hit F3, that will take you from the large mix console to the lower zone mix console. So you could just do that. Okay, so just seeing, okay, I just found a Destiny plugin in the control panel. So let me just see if it's one of the MIDI inserts. Density here, sorry. Okay. So let me just put it on a part that I kind of know it sounds like. So let's jump back to this. I'll put it on a MIDI part here. So let's say I'll take I haven't messed around with this one. Okay, so let's say I'll just do it on this part here. I'll just put that in the loop. So you can see it's kind of take away some of the polyphony of the chords. So it's just kind of taking different notes maybe that were busier. And if you go kind of higher, it's going to try to add more MIDI data to the part. So, if you wanted just kind of musical variations, it looks like that's what it's kind of really designed to do. All right, so just ask, how do you use the same VST instrument on multiple MIDI tracks? Okay. So let's say I'll do just new empty project here. And let's say I'll start off with an instrument track. So let's say I have Hallian Sonic SE. I'll do one instance of that. So I see my MIDI output is set to Hallian Sonic SE, but let's say I select that and I add 8 MIDI tracks. So I'll just come here. So let's say 8 and then hit add track. And now all of these will be routed directly to, when we look at it, to the same particular instrument. So we could just come over here and there'll be the MIDI channel, as we look at it here, will be incremented as you do it. All right, so I just see how to mastering volume increase. So a lot of people when they're doing mastering volumes, so we kind of showed how we could take kind of the like an entire file and normalize it. So if you wanted to, let's say I'll do just a quick export of a section here. I'll make this. So just have a little part of a song and I wanted to export this. A lot of people will run, like as you're working in your mix console here. Let me just say we're.
Guess all along I was so naive. Now you're packing boxes ready to leave.
So a lot of people will run different maximizers on the master.
On the floor, I've got to choose what's mine and what's yours. Guess all along I was so naive.
So a lot of people do that and if you kind of bypass it.
Boxes our musical history laid out on the floor.
But once it's been, if I wanted to do a quick audio export, say I'll just do a quick stereo mix of my stereo file here. And I'll just put it into the same audio track. So now it should be placed at the bottom of our project. So here's our mix down file. So I'm probably too hot. But you could do a quick analysis of it by going audio to statistics and see where you are for your LUFS. And let's say at this point I wanted it, super loud. So let's say it's just inappropriately loud, but let's say if I wanted to do further processing, I could go over here and just go to in the audio menu and select processes. And you could choose to normalize. And again, here you could say, -6 LUFS or whatever. 14 is a good place to be. And that will automatically just apply that processing to the file. If it was for like broadcast on television, I'd probably want -23 LUFS. So you can see that file has now been normalized to kind of the optimum level. So those are some things you use to get kind of the mastering, a mastered sound into your part if you wanted to. All right. So question: to achieve some more lyrical MIDI parts, can you set Cubase to record the MIDI notes instead of the audio when singing or humming in real time with a microphone as a sort of alternate controller? It's not going to do it in real time. What Cubase can do, if you have, if you just recorded some parts of your voice, you could, select the audio file and then do the, go into Very Audio and do the pitch correction, and just have that turned into a MIDI file, but it's not going to do it kind of on the fly with that. All right, so you see Stephen A. Sheehan, greetings from rainy New York. I'm in DC, so it's raining here too. So I think it's supposed to get cold over the weekend, start to feel like fall. So I see question: is Groove Agent 5 full version compatible with Windows 7 or do I need Windows 10? So I don't know off the top of my, I don't think that I think there's a strong chance it'll work in Windows 7, but it might not be supported as it's not being supported by Microsoft anymore. But I don't think that, I seem to remember running Groove Agent. I know Groove Agent 4 I was running on Windows 7. I'm inclined to think that it would work. There wasn't any like major things that would make it, not work with that. So, but you could always give the trial version a quick try as well. So I see a question from Kaylin Austin. Are there any resources for people switching over from Pro Tools to Cubase? I'm finding the transition challenging. I don't, I know that there's a lot of different resources, but if obviously both programs are pretty big and deep, so I might be able to show you some stuff and it's not the area that you're working in. But if you have like a specific questions, like, I want to do this. It's, maybe it's called this in this program. How would I do that in Cubase? We could answer that, but, otherwise it could be a little too broad. So if you have like a specific thing, and you could always send those as a question to clubcubase at steinberg.de. Okay, so we see Paul, the guitarist. I believe he's from Lynchburg, Virginia, fellow Virginian. Hi, Greg. When loading channel strip or audio insert settings, how can I filter user presets from stock ones? So let's take a quick look. So I'll just open this one up. Let's go to channel strip. So I think if we go to like your user location here, so when we so if you're browsing this way, a lot of them, the user settings, unless you specifically have gone through and tagged. So I'll go ahead and just create a quick user setup here. Okay, so I have all this and life is fantastic, and I'll save the strip preset. So I'm just going to call it October 16, 2020. Okay, so as I save that as my October 16th, 2020, so when I go to my presets, one way might be that, you'll see less tagging information. So there's my October 16th, 2020. So we notice that this doesn't have that particular tag. But as you're going through like your media bay, if you approach it like this, you could say, let's go to user presets for strip. And here's all of my user presets. So if you're kind of loading it up from the channel strip, you can do that, but all your user settings. So we go home and we say user presets strip. And if I have this particular channel open, I can say, oh, let's just drag default over, so we could just change that, or I could just say, I want to go to this particular one, or just drag it to the track and that will change. So if I want that, and if I want, I could just drag this over to, let's say I have this track and I don't have any of these enabled. So, and I just want to drag my own user preset over, just drag it onto the track, and all that will be set up and preserved for you. So that's how you could find your own users. But if you're doing it within the plugin, probably the factory ones will have lots of metadatas, and the ones that you create may not have metadata. So that's another way to distinguish between factory and user presets. Okay, so I see Gareth needs melodies, country style. I don't listen to a lot of country music, so I may not be the best melodies. So for that, I see comp tools, great stuff from Gareth. That's great. Okay, so hey, Greg, question about Halion. When I'm browsing through its presets up and down, its window is always closing after browsing 3 or 4 or 5 presets. What's the best way to browse through presets? So let's go ahead and take a quick look. So let's say if I'll do it in Halion and Halion Sonic SE just in case. So if I'm going through Halion Sonic SE, sometimes people use the terms interchangeably. So I come here. So let's say I choose my library. So I want to come to Chris St. Aubyn's Simple. So I come here. So say I load that up. And now when I kind of click here, I could try out some different ideas. Let's see if I have this. Just do this on a new project quickly. And the same basic principle applies for Halion as well. So go to simple. And let's say I have my preset here. So if now I just kind of, let's say I click here to the right, and now I could select that preset. I think, let's say if I load it from this window, go down. So let's say I just come over here, hit enter, and I have to keep. So navigate down, enter. We just kind of keep this little dialog box. So, and if it's with Halion specifically, I think it'll be kind of same concept. We'll just come here to Halion, and I think we could do basically the same thing. So load up a quick choir. So now just kind of click here. Keep the dialog open. Double click, and that dialog remains open. So that's for Gareth. So he can have his new country song, hopefully. Kind of sad and minory, but yeah, just give that a quick try and see if that makes sense. Okay, so a question I was wondering how to copy events in the same positions from one audio to another. Is it possible? Sorry about my English. I'm sure your English is better than me speaking whatever your native language is, so no apologies necessary. All right, so let's say I have an audio file here and I want to move it to another track in the same spot. Now, one of the things that we could do is what's called a constrain copy. So I'll take this event here, and let's say I hold down the Alt key to make a copy. Okay, so I let go, but it's not in the same time position. So I hold down the Alt key to make a copy. So right now, I moved it down first. So Alt key to make a copy. And then if you hit the Control or Command key, that will constrain the direction. So now I can't move it in time while holding down Alt or Control or Command Option on Mac. So I let go of the Control or Command key. I can move it freely. And then when I come here, it's going to constrain, so I can't move that in time. So if I move this, let's say I had a number of empty audio tracks. And let's say I moved this first. So let's say I had this in a number of different spots. And let's say I move it in time first between left and right. So now when I copy, I can move it, but I can't, as soon as I hold down Control, I'm constrained from moving it vertically. So what determines what aspect is constrained is based on the direction that you move it. One other method is under nudging. You could do this as a key command. So I think it's under the nudge category. We could just say, I think that, nudge. Then there's up and down. So I have this set for Option Shift down, my down arrow, and Option Shift up for up arrow. So I have those kind of set. So now I could just move this and move it to different tracks without adjusting it in time. So those are two different methods for that. All right, I know we had some questions that were sent in. I'll get through some of those now. So before we miss our window. Okay, so over Facebook, someone had said when they do the reference track through the control room, that they're not able to hear the click track when they switch over. So, if we have our part set here, so let's say we have this audio track and we have it going into our control room mixer. And the premise is if we have effects on our master bus of our project, and I have a separate track, and let's say this is a reference track. So instead of sending my reference track through, and I'll just go ahead, we'll call this reference. Instead of sending the reference track through the master fader, which is then going through its processing, we want the reference track to be unprocessed. So an easy way of doing this is to take the reference track and to send it to a QSend, and on its actual routing, we're going to choose no bus. So we could play these two tracks kind of back together. And when I switch to my Q mixes, we hear the original track, but not. And this is what the mix is of the file that I applied the EQ to. So I'll do even a more extreme EQ. So, and let's say we want to toggle back and forth between the reference track in our control room. So that's our reference track. That's not going through the master. And now we're listening to everything going into the master. So the question is, why can't I hear my click track? So if I have my click track turned on, when you go to the cues, that the cue tracks can have the click track disabled. So you may want to make sure that when you switch over to the cue, that the reference cue track has the click track turned on. And then I think you'll be all set with that. Okay, so we had a question from Taylor Sapp. It says, I've had a UR22C quite some time now, but I used it for recording for the first time and ran into an issue I couldn't solve on my own. I ran a condenser mic into input 1, phantom power on, set up my inputs and audio connections for mono bus on input 1, track monitor switch power off. When I listen to the microphone being monitored through the interface, the sound is panned to the left side of the headphones of the mic only. The music is fine. When we were able to work with it, but I didn't feel right having the vocal panned left during recording. It plays back centered. When I turn the monitor switch on during recording, it sounds centered, but there is latency. So I'd prefer to have the monitor latency free through the interface. I didn't have this issue with the UR22. Is there something I am missing, or do I have a defective unit? Okay, so I got a microphone hooked up, and let's go ahead and take a quick listen to this. So we have, let's see if this is the project that I had set up. All right, so I have this set up as my, so I'll have my audio track set up here, and I have a separate mic, and let me make an adjustment here quickly. All right, so when I see this, I got my UR22C, and this would kind of work the same way. So I'll open up the edit channel settings. I'm going to turn the reverb down here. So now I'm talking into the mic, and I will. So I'm talking into the mic that we're recording. And if I think what Taylor was running into with the UR22C, and this works differently than the UR22 because the UR22C actually has DSP built in. So we'll select the UR22C in the audio setup. So if I take it off of my direct monitoring, what we're going to have is you hear the latency, and it's in both speakers. And if we take this, so now I put direct monitoring on because the UR22C has its own built-in interface, built-in DSP. So if I take this off, I only hear the signal kind of on. I'm plugged into input 2. We only hear the signal on the channel. So I put this on, and if we're not in direct monitoring, so I'll bypass that. And now I'm only hearing it in the right channel, and we hear the weird delay. So just make sure that you put it on direct monitoring, and then you still have access to all of the built-in DSP without any of the latency penalty. So you could add more reverb if you wanted to, come and say we wanted to have the morphing channel strip. And we could do this all without DSP. So, while you're recording, if you wanted to adjust the EQ on input, you're able to do that directly right there. And you can kind of morph between different settings that are kind of preset for you, so you could have kind of the built-in compression and EQ, but just make sure that if you have the monitoring turned on, that what it's doing is make sure that the direct monitoring is turned on. You're going to have your latency, or you could turn that and you'll just have the capability of seeing the everything kind of set up as you expect. So you could just try to do that, and I think you'll be all set with that, Taylor. So turn direct monitoring on. Okay. Okay, so we had some questions about like 808 glides. So, when we're doing kind of, different 808 glides, one of the things is, and someone, was kind enough to send me a picture, when we put, a sample into monophonic mode, we could play chords if we wanted to. And there's different glide modes. So if I wanted to play, the chords as they are, I could come here. But if you want to do different 808 glides, playing it back in mono, if you put it into your mono mix here, so all you have to do is place it into mono, then you could just use the glides. But what a lot of people do is they don't hold down the first note. And so, make sure that, and it could be dependent upon the instrument, but, so other instruments may react differently, but just try. So you could do different glide stuff like that, but make sure that the first note is being held down. Okay, so we had someone that had sent in a question about using, and it's a plugin that I don't have, but I came across an issue with this plugin, Elfo tool, made by Xfer Records. It's a volume shaper that's controlled by MIDI. However, as you can see in the video, demonstrated that the first MIDI note of a loop did not make it through the plugin, respond correctly if that's right on the beat. And he sent a video. It says he's contacted the plugin developer. So, if I did some research on this and read through some forums, so it seems like it happens in a lot of other programs, kind of maybe despite what the developer has indicated to you. But I haven't, Cubase resets the different MIDI events pretty accurately for lots of different types of plugins, so it doesn't seem to be an issue. And this is when he kind of does a MIDI loop of like 4 bars, that it needs time. It's not catching the very first note of the loop. You could experiment with some of the preferences here, and on the MIDI chase. So if we go to under MIDI, you'll see different chase events. So, check to see if maybe, and also look in your MIDI part to see if there's lots of extraneous MIDI controllers like pitch bend or aftertouch. So, it wasn't visible in the part, but when you look at the particular event here, you could just say, okay, we're going to open the list editor. Make sure it's just like the notes that are being triggered. So sometimes MIDI controllers may be spitting out, like some controllers may spit out a lot of aftertouch. So if I was just recording, on my sampler track here, on my controller, so let's say I'm here and I press the key down, So it seems like I just hit, a couple of notes. When I actually go to look at it in the list editor, you can see all this aftertouch, and that could be clogging up your MIDI data stream and putting the note message earlier. So see if there's, a lot of, go to your MIDI list editor and see what all the data is that's in that particular part. So that's one thing I couldn't see from the video you sent, but thanks for sending the video. Excuse me. Okay, so I think the next couple of questions that were sent in from, I think, Vikas. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. We had covered already. Okay, so let's go back to our live chat. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. Okay, so we're doing pretty good on time. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so just see maybe it's comment. I'm not sure if it's a question, but different way to change change locators. You know, it's an easy way to change the locators. A lot of people miss is hitting the letter P. So if I select a particular range, you could hit the letter P, and that will set the locators. So that's kind of a handy function. There's also a preference under editing that the cycle follows range selection. So as soon as I come over here, anytime that I select a range with my range tool, I could have that automatically work or not have that tied. So again, I'll come here to preferences, cycle follows range selection. And now as I select the range, whatever I do with the range tool, the editor automatically will reflect that, and the range, the left and right locators will automatically follow. All right, just seeing also Gareth mentioning that he's had great support from Steinberg and very responsive. Okay, so I had a question. Is there any way to duplicate notes while keeping any gaps before the first and last note? Example, bass note on second, third, and fourth position, and no one on first position. Now I want to copy this. So if we go to the in-place editor, and I think it's maybe Command-Shift-I or Control-Shift-I. So we see an in-place editor here. So let's say I have, and I think what you want to do is, let's say we're in bars and beats for this particular event. So I'll go ahead and close that. Okay, so let's say I just want to copy like this measure of that data. So a lot of times when we're in the editor itself and I duplicate, it's just going to place it directly after the event. And that's often not what you want, like this one measure of data to be copied. So the way to do this, I know this is kind of an annoying workaround, but go to the just go to the range, hit Control or Command plus Shift I, and I'll take you to the in-place editor. So I think we were over here. And now once you're in the in-place editor, you could use the range selection tool. So I'll just take out combo modes, go to range selection tool. I will select that measure of events. And now I could duplicate, and it's going to place that directly kind of on the same beat position. So you could select a range of one measure and duplicate that. So I know it's kind of annoying to have to do that, but that's a quick, easy way of doing it. I see Vinny Sabatino indicating people should hit the like button. So we'll concur with that. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that. Okay. Okay, so I see a question from Oren Bynum. I had a successful transfer of Cubase instruments to my new computer. That's great. However, all the sounds of my project sounds didn't transfer. Some did. Any advice? So if you want like specific sounds that are in a project, Oren, what you may want to do is make sure that you do a backup project. So go to your file menu and choose backup project. And at that point, it'll ask you to do a new folder, and this could be like the USB flash drive or hard drive, and place everything into the new folder, and this will copy over all of the sounds that are being used in that project into the folder, and then you could open up that, you copy that folder over, and then you should be good to go. Okay, so I just see when opening a project, Cubase asks, do you want to recall URC data from project file? Why does it ask this, and why should I not want it to do? How can I skip it from asking? So I'm not sure what the URC data is. I don't think I've seen that message. So it might, I'm not sure if it's... we have audio interfaces that are URCs. So I'm not sure if it's with that, but I haven't, I've used the URCs, for every Hangout, and I haven't really come across that, but it could be a third-party plugin that could cause that as well. Okay, so hi, Greg, a quick guide of the range selection tool, please. Okay, so let me just jump to project here. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. Okay, so the range selection tool, and we could access it now in a combined object selection range tool. So what the range selection tool is going to allow you to do is take like multiple parts here, and then if you wanted to just delete without cutting, or I wanted to select a range of events here, and see if I do it correctly this time. So I'll select a range, and then I could just move the range here, or if I hold down the Alt or Option key, I can again just say, okay, I want to take that range, hold down the Alt or Option key, make a copy. You could also do some other fun things with the range tool. So if I wanted to just get rid of that part, I think it's Alt Shift X, and that will kind of just get rid of those particular parts. So if I wanted to, let's say just, I wanted to just delete that range and move all this data over to the right, I could do that. If I wanted to split, I could just hit Shift X, and that will now split. So I could say, I wanted these events to be different colors, for the bridge. I could come right over here and just say, okay, I want those to be red, just, so I could just split the range. Some other cool range tools, functions that you could do. I want to take this, and I like that particular range. Maybe it's a live concert. You get a range and choose to crop, and then that will delete everything before and after the range. So those are a couple cool little tips for the range selection tool. Okay, just checking time. So maybe do one or two more quick questions. Okay, just going through. All right, so quick question. As we move towards having to do nothing with all these updates, what are the best ways to edit for feel in 10.5? So a lot of times, I'm not sure with this like, editing for feel. So sometimes, you could do stuff like, sometimes people are so surgical and precise that they edit everything for the sake of editing it. So I think a lot of times, stuff that's slightly out of time can be interesting, and mistakes are interesting. So don't necessarily have to use all the editing that comes with it. But I'm not sure. I could be misunderstanding your question. Okay. And it says they're always looking for something maybe I didn't think about or know about. So, the great thing about a tool like Cubase is, you can just keep going, and, you're never really committed, because you have so much levels of undo and stuff like that. So just always try to, try something new every day. Try a new MIDI plugin, try an audio plugin that you haven't used before, and, learn new keyboard shortcuts, watch Hangouts to get stuff like this. So, okay, so just see from Oren, Greg, when I asked a question last week about is there a group locally that helps beginners like me, I meant is there an online group, US, that won't mind helping people like me? We don't mind helping people like you, so it's no problem. We'll do anything. All right, so we see Clay Ostwald on a Hangout, our celebrity guest. He's done amazing records, all the amazing Gloria Stefan stuff, and John Cicada and Broadway shows. So great to see you on the Hangout, Clay. All right, let's me check the time. All right, so I'm getting right at the very end. I don't want to go over and lose all my translations for my closed captioning. I want to thank everyone for all the great questions that were asked. I hope that everyone's learned a new tip or trick. And if you have, just feel free to like the video. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel. I think we're going to be good for next Tuesday. I should know in the next day or so I'll post it on the normal channels. But everyone have a wonderful weekend. Please stay safe and healthy, and we will talk and see you hopefully next Tuesday. But it's looking good for Tuesday with other work assignments. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon. And again, send questions in advance to Club Cubase at steinberg.de. Goodbye.